This is Andhra Pradesh in India. One of the largest states in the country, it's home to more than 50 million people, 2 enormous rivers, and a thriving agricultural industry. But it's also known for a pair of problems that you wouldn't expect to find in the same place: catastrophic floods and searing droughts. For nearly 100 years, engineers and governments have been trying to build something remarkable to address this critical issue. A gigantic project that would transfer water between floods and drought-prone areas. So there's always the right balance. From a record-breaking barrier to a hydropower plant and sprawling canals, the result of a plan that's been around since the Second World War is now in full swing. But as incredible as it might seem, work here has been tough going. Natural disasters, political clashes, and land acquisition challenges have set this project back by decades. What started out as the lifeline of the region has, at times, looked dead and buried. But now, all hands are on deck to finish a mega build that's already been making some serious waves. Extending for almost 1,000 kilometres along India's southeast coast is Andhra Pradesh. A leading producer of rice and tobacco, the state is highly dependent on the weather. In a tropical monsoon climate like this, however, atmospheric conditions can be extreme. In the central and eastern parts of the region, almost 800,000 hectares of land experience regular flooding. That's an area 5 times as big as London, and in the last 2 decades, things have only gotten worse. 2024 saw a flood so devastating that dozens of lives were sadly lost. But meanwhile, there are severe droughts to deal with too. 4 districts further to the west have seen years of sparse rainfall, leading to a decline in crop yields and a lack of drinking water. So we've got one place where there's a surplus of H2O and another where it's in very short supply, all within the same state. If only there was some way to balance this out. Enter the Polavaram Project, stretching for more than 3.5 kilometres across the Godavari, India's second longest river. It'll provide 720,000 acres of land with much needed irrigation, stand as a powerful flood defence, and generate a huge amount of power for the area. This incredible new piece of infrastructure will effectively control this key section of the river. With it, water can be transferred out when levels get too high towards areas that don't have enough water. Now, heads up, there are several parts to this project and all of them are pretty massive. We're going to start by looking at the one that's most easily visible, the spillway. More than 50 metres high, it's an immense barrier equipped with 48 hydraulic gates that can let water pass through if necessary, like when flooding is imminent. And because these disasters can get pretty intense, particularly around the Godavari, planners haven't taken any chances. The structure is built to withstand and protect against the biggest floods possible in the region, the kind that would only be expected once in a millennium. Its discharge capacity of 5 million cusecs is larger than any other spillway on Earth. In case you need reminding, a cusec is a unit of measuring water equal to 1 cubic foot per second. Measuring just over 1,100 metres horizontally, it's the largest spillway in the world, even beating the one on the Three Gorges Dam in China. Another record was broken during its construction, which had nothing to do with its length. In 2019, 32,000 cubic metres of concrete was poured in 24 hours. No other project had ever deposited so much of that material in such a short space of time. Another feature that makes this different from most spillways is the unusual looking structure that's been built to one side of it, the fish ladder. With a total length of more than 250 metres, it allows fish to continue swimming upstream to their breeding grounds during the monsoon season when water levels get very high. But before any work could start on the spillway, an enormous channel had to be dug out of the riverbank. This created an entirely new watercourse where the flow can be controlled with those moving gates before it's allowed to pass back into the Godavari. As for the dam itself, which is yet to properly begin construction, it'll span almost 2.5 kilometres across the river, roughly parallel to the spillway. Made from a mixture of compacted earth and rock, it's being constructed in 2 phases up to a height of 45 metres. The dam will sit on top of a concrete diaphragm wall built into the ground. Its job is to give the dam stability from all the water pressure sitting behind it while ensuring there are no leaks. But there was a big problem with it. In 2019, a huge flood hit the region, causing water to surge right up to the wall, washing some of it away. The damage was so bad the government opted to start again rather than to try and repair it. Work on that is currently underway and needs to be completed by November 2025. Now, building a dam like this can only really be done in a dry area, which is why 2 cofferdams have been put in above and below where the new dam will go. They're supposed to stop water getting in during construction, which is exactly what happened during 2019. To be fair, they were only partially built back then and have since been fully completed. Once complete, the dam will help to form a new reservoir as well as direct water to the spillway on its journey down to the Bay of Bengal. But that's not the only route it can take. A pair of giant canals will enable water to be sent east to reservoirs 180 kilometres away and west to the Krishna River. Yep, you heard that right. This project will also see the 2nd and 7th longest rivers in India joined together. The 2 endpoints of these new canals sit close to some of the state's worst drought hotspots, which are mostly to the west past the Krishna. But not everyone's convinced that damming the river is going to be beneficial to them. Concerns have been raised that several villages in nearby Odisha are at risk of flooding once the project completes due to backwater flowing upstream. Although ideas have been put forward, such as building an extra embankment and providing compensation, an agreement between the local governments has not yet been reached. Finally, there's the 960 megawatt hydro plant that's being constructed right next to the main dam. Because if you're going to have all that water rushing around, you might as well try and harness some of its power. Despite construction of this being in the early stages, the holes for the penstocks, 150 metres long and 9 metres in diameter, are already clearly visible. A penstock is basically a tunnel that takes water from a reservoir to a turbine, where electricity is generated. There's a staggering amount of effort going into this scheme, so you can perhaps begin to understand why it's not been a straightforward process. But most wouldn't have expected it to take almost a century to get to where it is today, and still be years away from completion. The Polavaram Project was originally conceived in the 1940s when India was still part of the British Empire, but it wasn't until 1980 that the foundation stone was laid, and then work didn't properly start until 2004. The next few years were mostly spent on the design, land acquisition, and getting approvals from multiple government departments, which took a lot longer than planned. Another decade passed before actual construction began at the main site. It had just been given national project status by India's central government and a target finish date of 2018. But as you can see from this recent footage, that deadline has been missed by a long way. The question then is, what's caused this project to veer so far off course overall when some aspects, like the pouring of concrete, seem to be going smoothly? Well, in truth, it's a combination of things. Firstly, acquiring all the land has been difficult, and it's not hard to see why when you consider the impact on the local population. Unfortunately, to build a project that could benefit millions, some have to make some very big sacrifices. Whole communities have been relocated because their homes stood in the way of the construction or the new bodies of water being created. We're talking at least 200,000 people. Organising permanent new places to live for so many individuals has not been easy, especially when around half are from tribes that have lived in the same area for generations. Vast areas of forests are being submerged to build this project, and there have been those disputes with neighbouring states as well. Thirdly, changes in local government haven't exactly helped matters. Rival parties have been quick to blame each other for the lack of headway. After his recent re-election, the region's chief minister, Chandrababu Naidu, claimed his predecessor oversaw progress of less than 4% in his 5 years in office. Finally, the main contractor has been changed twice. Megha Engineering and Infrastructures Limited is now in charge of the construction, but the fact they haven't been from the beginning has caused delays. These factors, along with inflation, complying with new environmental regulations, and changes to the design and scope of the project have had an impact on the cost too. When construction began more than 20 years ago, $1.5 billion was the estimate. The latest total is around $3.5 billion, but at one point it was more than $6 billion. Now the pressure is on to wrap things up once and for all. In late 2024, Naidu declared the project must be completed by 2027, with Phase 1 of the dam finished no later than October 2026. At a media briefing, the state's Minister for Water Resources said his boss had made it clear there should be no more deviation from the plan, not even by 1 hour. With this strict new target in place, hopefully the people of this region will soon see the completion of this critical scheme that's been going on for far too long. A piece of new infrastructure this large and complicated was always going to be difficult to deliver, but the Polavaram Project has at times been more of a liability than a lifeline. When it finally crosses the finish line and future floods and droughts hit the region, we'll know whether it's been worth the wait. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.